I'm standing in a bank conference room watching my mother-in-law's face drain of color as the representative pulls up a document on the screen. Her perfectly manicured hand, the one that threw my suitcases onto the driveway 3 weeks ago, is trembling against the mahogany table. Behind her, my sister-in-law Vanessa has gone completely still, her usual smirk frozen like a mask that's cracking down the middle. The bank rep, this nervous man named Gerald with sweat beading on his upper lip, keeps glancing at me like I'm about to detonate. Maybe I am. As I was saying, Gerald continues, his voice shaking, the current legal owner of the property at 1847 Meadowbrook Lane is. He pauses, swallows hard. Maria Elena Jenkins. Patricia's mouth opens. Closes. Opens again. That's impossible. But it's not impossible. It's right there on the screen. My name. Sole owner. $8.7 million mansion. And the monthly mortgage payment of $8,400 that's been automatically withdrawn for 14 months from an account I didn't even know existed. I'm 6 months pregnant, living in a Holiday Inn with $63 left in my checking account, and I apparently own the estate they kicked me out of while calling me a gold-digging waitress. 6 months pregnant with a baby whose father vanished 3 weeks ago after his family told me he wanted a divorce. The father who, 5 minutes ago, sent me an email that starts with, "Maria, if you're reading this, you're finally learning the truth. I'm dying." My hands are shaking so badly I can barely hold my phone. The email continues but I can't read it, not here, not with Patricia's voice rising to that pitch that means she's about to start threatening lawsuits. Not with Richard, Matt's father, looking at me like I'm something he stepped in. Not with Vanessa pulling out her phone, probably to call their lawyer, the one who sent me those divorce papers with the $100,000 settlement that would have stripped me of everything. Everything that was apparently already mine. There must be fraud involved, Patricia is saying. She manipulated him. She. Gerald interrupts, and I've never heard someone sound so uncomfortable while holding all the power. The transfers were legal. Properly notarized. Filed with the county. Mrs. Jenkins has been the legal owner for over a year. I should say something. Should defend myself. But my mind is stuck on that email, on the words I glimpsed before Patricia started screeching. Stage 4 cancer. 6 months to live. Everything I did to protect you. Matt isn't abandoning me. Matt is dying. And he spent his last months on Earth doing, what? Setting a trap. For his own family. Mrs. Jenkins. Gerald is looking at me now. Are you all right? Do you need some water? What I need is to understand how my entire life became a story I don't recognize. But what I say is, how long have these payments been coming from my account? 14 months. Since the property was transferred into your name. 14 months ago, Matt and I had been married for 10 months. I was studying for my nursing boards. He'd come home one night with papers, said the accountant needed my signature for tax purposes. I'd signed them while half asleep, trusting him completely. Trusting him. God, I'm either the luckiest woman alive or the stupidest, and I can't figure out which. I want her arrested, Patricia says, standing up. This is theft. Identity fraud. I don't care what those papers say, she. Sit down, Patricia. Richard's voice is quiet, but it cuts through his wife's hysteria like a knife. He's staring at me with an expression I can't read. This isn't fraud. This is Matthew. Something in the way he says Matt's name makes my stomach drop. What do you mean? I whisper. Richard's jaw clenches. My son did exactly what I would have done. He protected his assets from his family. He looks at Patricia, and there's something almost like satisfaction in his eyes. He knew we'd come for it. So he made sure we couldn't touch it. Before we continue with my story, can I ask you something? I spend 15 to 20 hours researching, writing, and perfecting each story for you. That's nearly a full week of work to create these experiences completely free. While you're here learning what happened to me, YouTube only shows it to a tiny fraction of people unless you take just 2 seconds to hit subscribe. Here's the thing, if just half of you watching right now subscribed, this channel would explode, and I could create even deeper, more complex stories for you every single week. But only about 3% of viewers are subscribed. That means 97% of you are enjoying hours of content but haven't taken that tiny step. I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for a single click that tells YouTube, show this to more people. So here's my request. If you're invested in my story so far, if you want to know how a pregnant woman went from a holiday into reclaiming a mansion, click subscribe. It takes 2 seconds and means everything to this channel's survival. Also, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love seeing this global community we're building. Last video we had viewers from 47 different countries. Now, let's get back to the story, because what Matt did next changed absolutely everything. To understand how I ended up in that conference room, I need to take you back to the beginning. Not to when I met Matt, though that matters too, but to the moment everything started unraveling. 6 months ago. Early Tuesday morning. I woke up to an empty bed, which wasn't unusual. Matt had been leaving early for work, coming home late, taking phone calls in other rooms. The distance had started 3 months earlier, right around when I'd discovered I was pregnant. I'd tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself it was just stress from his job at his father's real estate company. But that morning, something felt different. Wrong. I found them in the kitchen. Patricia, Richard, and Vanessa. Sitting at my kitchen table like they owned the place. Which, I'd thought at the time, they kind of did. The mansion had been in the Jenkins family for 30 years. I was just the girl from the Bronx who'd gotten lucky. Maria. Patricia's voice could have frosted glass. Sit down. I was wearing pajamas, my hand instinctively going to the small bump barely visible under my oversized t-shirt. What's going on? Where's Matt? Matt is dealing with business matters, Richard said. Not looking at me. Never looking at me. Vanessa was the one who smiled when she delivered the killing blow. Matt wants a divorce, Maria. He's been unhappy for months. He made a mistake, and now he wants to fix it before the baby complicates things. The floor tilted. I grabbed the counter, my nursing training kicking in automatically. Shallow breathing, elevated heart rate, possible panic attack. That's not. He would have told me himself. He asked us to handle it because he knew you'd be emotional. Patricia stood, smoothing her designer dress. We've arranged a settlement. $100,000. Our lawyer will have papers ready by Friday. $100,000. For 2 years of marriage. While carrying their grandchild. I want to talk to Matt. Matt has made his wishes clear. Richard was buttoning his suit jacket, preparing to leave. You can make this easy, or you can make it difficult. But the outcome will be the same. I called Matt the second they left. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. I texted, your family was just here. Please call me. The message showed delivered but was never read. For 3 days, I lived in that mansion alone, calling Matt every few hours. On the 4th day, a courier arrived with divorce papers and a settlement agreement that included a clause specifically stating I waived any claim to the Westchester property. That clause should have been my first clue. I called Carmen, my friend from high school who'd become a lawyer. She looked at the papers during lunch and called me back within an hour. Don't sign this. Something's wrong. Why would they need you to specifically waive claim to the house unless you might actually have a claim to it? I don't own anything. Matt never put anything in my name. Are you sure? Did you ever sign documents? Anything besides your marriage license? I remembered then. A year ago. Stack of papers. Matt saying it was for taxes. The accountant needed my signature. I'd been studying for an exam, had barely glanced at them. Find those papers, Carmen said. Before you sign anything. Matt's office was on the 2nd floor, a room I rarely entered because he called it his private workspace. But Matt was gone. Had abandoned me. So that afternoon, 6 months pregnant and feeling like my world was ending, I searched every drawer. The locked drawer wasn't obviously locked, I'd just never tried to open it. The key was in his desk organizer, hidden behind paper clips. Inside were folders. Property deeds. Investment accounts. Insurance policies. And one labeled Maria, confidential. Inside was the deed to the mansion. Transferred from Jenkins Family Trust to Maria Elena Jenkins 14 months ago. My signature. Matt's signature. Notarized and filed. I owned the house. But there was more. The Manhattan corporate apartment. My name. The Hamptons property. My name. Investment accounts totaling $4.2 million with me as primary beneficiary. A life insurance policy for $10 million naming me as sole beneficiary. I called Carmen back, my voice barely working. I found something. She came over that night, spread everything across the dining room table. When she finished reviewing the documents, she looked at me with something between awe and confusion. Maria, you're not just entitled to a settlement. You own everything. The house, the apartments, millions in assets. This isn't about a divorce. This is about something else. But why would Matt do this? Why put everything in my name and then leave? Carmen bit her lip. I don't know. But don't tell anyone what you found. Not yet. I didn't have a choice about the secrecy part. Because the next morning, Saturday, Patricia showed up with a moving truck and 2 security guards. You have 2 hours to pack, she announced, standing in my foyer like a conqueror. If you're not out by noon, we'll have you forcibly removed. I live here. I'm Matt's wife. You're Matt's soon-to-be ex-wife who refused to sign generous settlement papers. Vanessa appeared behind her mother, perfectly styled even at 9 a.m. Mom has power of attorney for the estate. You're trespassing. I should have told them right then. Should have pulled out those property deeds and watched their world crumble. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the lawyer in me, Carmen's voice saying not to show my hand. Maybe it was survival instinct. Or maybe, deep down, I wanted to see exactly how cruel they could be. So I packed. Threw clothes into suitcases while Patricia supervised, making comments. Not the Chanel bag, dear. That was a gift from the family. I took only what I'd brought into the marriage. My old clothes. My nursing textbooks. Photos of my mother, who died a year before I met Matt. And I took those documents, folded them carefully and tucked them into my cardiac care textbook where Patricia would never think to look. Vanessa handed me $200 cash at the Holiday Inn like she was doing charity work. This should hold you over until you find a job. I'm sure Romano's would take you back. Romano's. The Italian restaurant where I'd met Matt 2 years ago. Where I'd been working double shifts to pay off nursing school loans while he walked in wearing a suit that cost more than my car. The Holiday Inn became my world. Room 247. Scratchy comforter. Heating unit that rattled all night. I had $847 in my personal checking account, money from before the marriage. I made it last. $11 breakfast buffet. Ramen noodles. Watching my savings dwindle to $200, then $100, then $63. I called Matt every day. Voicemail, voicemail, voicemail. I contacted his office. His assistant said he was unavailable. I left 17 messages. He never called back. Carmen was investigating something, she said. Following leads. But she was doing it for free because I couldn't afford her firm's retainer. The hotel manager, Denise, started leaving extra towels outside my door. Sometimes there'd be a sandwich from the kitchen or prenatal vitamins. My daughter went through something similar, she told me once. Men are cowards. But you're stronger than you know. I didn't feel strong. I felt like I was drowning. Then this morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Jenkins. This is Gerald Hoffman from American Trust Bank. I need you to come to our main branch today. There's an urgent matter regarding the property at 1847 Meadowbrook Lane. What kind of matter? His voice was strained. I'd rather discuss it in person. Can you be here by 2 p.m.? The Jenkins family is already here, and there's been some confusion about the ownership documents. Confusion about ownership. And they were calling me. I wore my nicest outfit, a navy maternity dress from Target, and flats because my feet were swelling. I took an Uber I couldn't afford, the $47 fare making my stomach clench. But I brought those documents. Every single one. Which is how I ended up in that conference room, watching Patricia's world collapse. But the real explosion came when my phone buzzed. After 3 weeks of silence, a text from Matt: "I'm sorry for everything. Check your email." I opened the email with shaking hands. No subject line. "Maria, if you're reading this, you're finally learning the truth. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you myself. 6 months ago, I was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The same thing that killed my grandfather. The doctors gave me 6 months, maybe 8 with treatment." The words blurred. Cancer. 6 months. Treatment. I didn't want you to watch me die. I didn't want our child's first memories to be of a sick father. So I made a choice. I spent the last year quietly transferring everything into your name. The house. The properties. The investments. Everything I could legally give you. I set up accounts to cover all the expenses so you'd never have to worry. My throat closed. I couldn't breathe. But I knew my family would fight it. I knew they'd try to take it all back, claim you manipulated me, drag you through courts for years. So I set a trap. I let them think I was abandoning you. I let them show their true colors. I let them throw you out, humiliate you, reveal exactly who they are. And now there's a record. Bank records of them trying to steal your property. Witness statements. Everything your lawyer needs to make sure they can never touch you or our child again. A trap. He'd set a trap using me as bait. I'm in a hospice in Vermont. I have maybe 2 weeks left. I couldn't tell you because I knew you'd drop everything to be with me, and I needed you safe first. I needed you protected from them. You own everything, Maria. The house, the money, all of it. And they can't touch any of it. 2 weeks left. Dying alone in Vermont while I lived in a Holiday Inn thinking he'd stopped loving me. I'm sorry I had to hurt you to save you. I'm sorry I won't meet our child. But you're going to be okay. You're stronger than all of them combined. I love you. I've always loved you. Matt. I looked up from my phone to find everyone staring at me. Patricia's face was twisted with something between rage and fear. Richard was watching me with an expression I finally recognized. Grudging respect. Vanessa had gone pale. Mrs. Jenkins. Gerald's voice seemed far away. Are you all right? I thought about the past 3 weeks. The hotel room. The ramen noodles. Vanessa calling me a good little waitress while handing me $200 like I was homeless. The nightmares. The fear. The loneliness. I thought about my baby, growing inside me. Matt's baby. The child they'd tried to erase before it was even born. I stood up slowly, placed both hands on the conference table, and looked Patricia Jenkins directly in her surgically perfected eyes. Get out of my house. Patricia's face contorted. You can't. I can. And I am. You have 72 hours to remove your personal belongings from my property. Anything left after that will be donated. And if you ever contact me again, if you ever come near me or my child, I will sue you for harassment, emotional distress, and attempted theft. Richard started to speak, but their lawyer, who'd been frantically scrolling through something on his tablet, put a hand on his arm. Mr. Jenkins, I think we should. 72 hours, I repeated. The locks will be changed Monday morning. Don't make me call the police. I walked out of that conference room with my head high, even though I was shaking so badly I could barely feel my legs. Made it to the lobby before I started crying. Not sad tears. Angry tears. Grief tears. Because Matt was dying, had maybe been dying since before I found out I was pregnant, and he'd spent his last months on earth protecting me instead of letting me love him through it. Carmen met me outside. I'd called her from the Uber. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. Whatever happened in there, we'll deal with it. I own the house, I whispered. I own everything. And Matt is dying. We sat on a bench outside that bank for an hour while I told her everything. The email. The diagnosis. The trap he'd set for his family. She listened, occasionally wiping her own tears, holding my hand. He loved you, she finally said. That man loved you enough to spend his dying months protecting you. I need to see him. I need to go to Vermont. Then we'll go. But first, let's get you back in your house. The next 72 hours were a blur. Carmen helped me contact a locksmith, a moving company, a security firm. Matt's actual lawyer, not his family's shark, contacted me. A woman named Helen Chen with kind eyes and a steel spine. Matthew was very specific, Helen said, sitting in my Holiday Inn room. He knew his family would contest the will. So he made sure everything was transferred to you before his death. They can't fight a will if the assets are no longer in the estate. How long has he known? How long did he plan this? He contacted me 13 months ago. Right after his diagnosis. He said, and I quote, "They'll try to take everything from her. They'll say she manipulated me. But I'm going to make sure that's impossible." Patricia, Richard, and Vanessa removed their belongings in 68 hours. I wasn't there. Carmen oversaw it with the security team. She told me later that Patricia cried, actual tears, as movers carried out her designer furniture. That Richard threatened lawsuits until their lawyer explained they had no case. That Vanessa took pictures of everything, probably for Instagram, trying to play the victim. Let them. I was done caring what the Jenkins family thought. On Monday morning, I walked back into that mansion for the first time in 3 weeks. Someone had cleaned, probably the service Matt had been paying for from my account. The house was empty of the Jenkins family presence. All their photos and personal items gone. It felt like a museum. But it was my museum now. I stood in the foyer where Patricia had thrown my suitcases and cried. For Matt. For the future we should have had. For our baby who would never know their father. But I also understood. Matt knew his family. Knew they'd destroy a grieving widow. So he'd protected me the only way he knew how, by making me unassailable before he was gone. I drove to Vermont 2 days later. The hospice was beautiful, overlooking mountains showing early fall colors. Matt was in a private room, and when I walked in, I barely recognized him. He'd lost at least 50 pounds. His skin had a grayish tint. But his eyes were still Matt's eyes. "Hi," he whispered. I sat beside his bed and took his hand. "You're an idiot." He laughed, which turned into a cough. "I know. You should have told me. Should have let me be here. They would have destroyed you." His voice was weak but certain. "You don't know what they're capable of. My whole life, I watched them manipulate and control everyone. I couldn't let them do that to you. To our baby. So you made them think you abandoned me instead. Made me think you stopped loving me. I never stopped loving you. Not for a single second." He squeezed my hand with what little strength he had. "Maria, you were the only real thing in my entire life. Everything else was performance. But you loved me when I was just some guy in a restaurant. Before you knew about the money. You loved me. We talked for hours. About the baby, a girl, I'd found out. About names, he wanted Elena, after my mother. About the house, he wanted me to make it a home, not the cold showpiece his mother had made it. About his family, don't give them anything, he said fiercely. They chose status over humanity a long time ago. You and Elena are my family now. I stayed in Vermont for 5 days. Sleeping in a room the hospice provided for family. Spending every possible moment with Matt. Watching him fade a little more each day. On the 5th day, early morning, he squeezed my hand and whispered, "Thank you for finding me in that restaurant. Thank you for loving me. Take care of our girl." He died at 6:23 a.m., with me holding his hand and sunrise painting the mountains gold. The funeral was small. Just me, Carmen, Helen, and a few of Matt's actual friends, people he'd kept separate from his family. Patricia, Richard, and Vanessa showed up anyway, dressed in designer black, playing the grieving family. Patricia tried to hug me. I stepped away. "You're really going to keep us from our son's funeral?" she hissed. "This is his funeral," I said quietly. "Not the performance you'll stage later for your social circle. This was for people who actually loved him." They left. And we buried Matt in a cemetery in Vermont, near where he'd spent his last days. Far from the family mausoleum where generations of Jenkinses were interred. The reading of Matt's will was exactly as brutal as he'd planned. Helen laid out every transfer, every account, every property. Patricia threatened legal action. Helen calmly explained that every single transfer had been done while Matt was demonstrably competent, that he'd undergone psychiatric evaluation specifically to prevent competency challenges. Matthew Jenkins protected his wife and child, Helen said coldly. If you attempt to take anything from them, I will personally ensure that every society page in New York knows you tried to steal from your own pregnant daughter-in-law. I wonder how that will affect your precious reputation. They didn't sue. They leaked stories instead, painting me as a gold digger. But the truth came out. Hotel staff gave interviews about the pregnant woman living on a shoestring budget while her in-laws drove Bentleys. Bank records showed when Patricia had tried to refinance a house she didn't own. The court of public opinion turned against them quickly. That was 8 months ago. Elena Marie Jenkins was born 4 months after her father died. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Matt's eyes and my dark hair. I had her at the hospital where I'd done my nursing clinical rotations, surrounded by nurses who'd become friends. I still live in the mansion, but it's different now. I donated Patricia's furniture and redecorated with comfortable pieces Elena can crawl on. I hired staff, people like Denise from the Holiday Inn, who needed a chance. The tennis court is being converted into a playground. The wine cellar is becoming a playroom. I finished my nursing degree. Online classes while pregnant, part-time after Elena was born. I took my boards last month and passed. I'm working 3 shifts a week at a community health clinic in the Bronx, near where I grew up. The money Matt left means I don't need to work. But I want to. I want to be the person he fell in love with in that restaurant, not someone who just lives off an inheritance. Patricia sends a card every month requesting visitation with her granddaughter. I haven't responded. Maybe someday, when Elena is old enough to understand, I'll let her make that choice. But right now, my job is to protect her the way Matt protected us. The Hamptons property. I sold it. Donated the proceeds to a charity supporting pregnant women in crisis. The corporate apartment. Converted it to housing for nursing students who can't afford Manhattan rent. The art collection. Most of it is in museums now, on loan, where people can actually see it. The business shares. I kept those. Went to the board meeting last month and voted against Richard's proposal to cut employee benefits. The look on his face when my proxy arrived was apparently legendary. Carmen is Elena's godmother. We have dinner every Sunday, and Elena adores her. Helen Chen stops by sometimes, ostensibly to check in, but really just to hold the baby. Denise is Elena's nanny 3 days a week and treats my daughter like her own grandchild. I think about Matt every day. Wonder what he'd think of Elena's first laugh, her first tooth, the way she grabs my finger with her tiny hand. Wonder what kind of father he would have been. Mourn the future we lost. But I also understand what he did. He knew he was dying. Knew his family would try to take everything. So he spent his last months making sure we'd be okay. Making sure his daughter would grow up secure and loved, free from the toxic environment he'd endured. That's love. Not the romantic comedy kind. Not the fairy tale. But real, sacrificial love. The kind that makes impossible choices and lives with the consequences. And that's how a waitress from the Bronx became the owner of an $8.7 million mansion. If you made it this far, you just experienced my entire journey, and I need to know, what was your favorite part? Did you see Matt's plan coming? Do you think I should eventually let Patricia meet Elena? Tell me in the comments right now. And drop your city and state. I want to know where this story is reaching. And if this story gave you chills, made you angry, or had you rooting for me, you need to subscribe because next week's story is about a woman who discovered her best friend had been systematically stealing her identity. Hit that like button, share this with someone who loves real-life drama, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, remember, your worth isn't determined by how people treat you. It's determined by how you rise after they've done their worst. Thank you for being here with me.